Bless up, everybody. How you doing? This is Brother King Kevin Dorival in the building, and I'm here to share some awesome news, fantastic history, and speak of some very legendary individuals. Now, August 22nd, 2021 makes it the 230-year anniversary of the Haitian Revolution. The country, the only country in the world that was created as a result from a rebellion against the oppressors. Former enslaved Africans turned to be the rulers and the government of a country. That has never happened ever since. And there's many other things that never happened. And there's a reason why you guys have never learned about this information. Critical information about some very extraordinary men and women. Now, the Haitian Revolution, which kicked off on August 22nd, 1791, some people say 1790 because there was a letter exchanged between General Toussaint and his lieutenant Jean-Jacques Dessalines, both who are the founding fathers of Haiti, along with King Henry Christophe, Suzanne Belair, and Simone Baptiste Toussaint, which was General Toussaint's wife. No wonder he picked her to be his wife, the warrior queen. Now, shout out to all my ancestors. There are many names that may not be mentioned in this presentation, which is cool. There will be many more presentations given by me as I speak at different schools or colleges, universities, high schools, community centers, whatever the case may be. And I have tons of other videos online. So yes, my name is Kevin Dorival, website kevindorival.com, and I'm here in honor of my ancestors, our ancestors, who kicked the oppressors' butt back in the day, debunking that theory of white supremacy and promoting black excellency, led by no other than General Toussaint L'ouverture, whose painting you have here before me. Now, this presentation is actually representation of two countries, mainly Ayiti, which is known as Haiti, but also France and the Emperor Napoleon Bonaparte, who was the leader of the French army in the 18th century. This is a painting that you have behind me here. Now, both these paintings are mine. This is an oil painting of Napoleon, which I'm going to get into, and also this is a print copy of a painting of General Toussaint L'ouverture. And we're going to go over a few things. So I definitely want to say thank you to all my supporters over the years, the different organizations who has booked me to come and speak, whether it be on Black history or just on being an author. I've written 3 books. And you go to my website, more information on that, kevindorival.com. But also, there's organizations such as the Haitian American Museum of Chicago, who had me give this very same presentation virtually on Zoom. Eventually, I'll be going to Chicago. But I want to give them thank you, Elsie, Carlos, and also Pastor Lourdes, who has helped me tremendously in crafting perfecting my craft, and also making me a representative on Haitian current affairs and history. So thank you all for that as well. Also, Courage to Beef International, which is the name of our nonprofit organization, where we help the youth learn and how to become entrepreneurs, how to write their own future instead of letting the criminal justice system write their future. So definitely check out our fundraiser on GoFundMe, which is the Roger Pierre Creative Arts Center / Museum, which we will be displaying these 2 pieces of art and many other pieces of art that we have here, and books. We want to teach the youth how to create their own future, period. Instead of letting the judges, the police officers, dictate and prophesy their future, give them lengthy, long prison sentences. Because I am a true advocate that by educating our children, educating the youth, letting them know about their greatness, instead of allowing the system tell them who they are. Like Malcolm X said, if you don't know who you are whatever anybody else tell you that you are. And Marcus Garvey once said, which is the flag you see behind me here, the RGB flag, red, black, and green, which represents the blood, the black people, and the green earth. So shout out to the Messiah, Marcus Garvey, for all he has done and he's also part of this lecture, believe it or not. So without further ado, let's continue with what we are here to say. Now, there's a few things I want to make sure that we make clear regarding Haiti and the revolution. The revolution was something that started because of all of the savagery, the barbarian, tactics they used to punish the African people who were enslaved and brought to the island of Ayiti, which means the land of mountains. It was inhabited by the Taino Indians, the native Indians there, and Christopher Columbus discovered it around 1492. A lot of things happened around 1492. So Christopher Columbus discovering this island, how did he discover it when it was already discovered and people had their own government there? So that's another lie that white supremacy and racism, been playing over the years. They'll tell us anything, we just run with it. Now, and by the way, he completely annihilated nearly 600,000, if not more, of the inhabitants of the island, with diseases and just killing them if they didn't come in with the amount of gold that he gave them a quota to bring, similar to what King Leopold did in the Congo in the early 19th century, late 19th century, early 20th century, when he colonized the Congo, right? Made it to his own backyard. This is what a lot of Europeans, what they did, due to the Treaty of Berlin in Germany, they sliced up Africa and different parts of the world of what they wanted to conquer and rule over to bring back to their country so they wouldn't die of starvation. So they were predators to the weak, enforced their power because they were strong, and they had guns and cannons. So there's only so much you can or won't do when someone telling you, hey, we want your land, we want your resources. If you don't give it to us, we're going to kill you. What you going to do? And so this is something that's been playing for centuries throughout history. This particular history is going to leave you mind-boggled. It's going to force you to ask yourself a certain amount of questions. And that's a good thing. That means the brain chemistry, the neural pathways in your brain are going to be asking you questions for you to research and to teach yourself, teach your children, teach your community. Because if your Black History program is not talking about the Haitian Revolution, it's really not talking about much. So for those of you who don't know who I am a filmmaker, I'm an author. I've written 3 books, The Courage to Believe, Winning in the Mirror, 7 Types of Queens, King Desire. And I'm going to write even more books and films and etc. etc. I'm also a mentor and filmmaker. So obviously entrepreneur. I have a full service cleaning business. So I am on my grind, doing what Marcus Garvey said. Do for self and do it in excellence. And do it in the name of your ancestors. Alright? Now, here we go. Now Haiti, which I mentioned, it's a powerful country, probably one of the most powerful histories in world history. And the beauty about Haiti, what you guys are going to learn today, today, is how did Haiti become so powerful? And how did it get to the current state that it's in now? And we're going to go into that. You're going to have a clear understanding of why Haiti is the way it is now, and what can we do to get it back to the level of excellence that Haiti once was. Personalities of Toussaint L'ouverture and Napoleon. How were they similar? How are they different from one another? Leadership styles, personalities. Were they men of honor? Did they practice certain rules of the game when it came to war? Did they ignore the rules? How were they as far as leadership-wise? Did people gravitate to them? Did they have some kind of magical power that many people believed that both of these gentlemen had, in their own right? The legacy. What kind of legacy they leave behind? That's another thing that's still debated, today. Now, Toussaint was born in Haiti, and his family is actually from Dahomey, which is the western part of Africa. A small country, very powerful. Warrior kingdom lasted about 10, 11 dynasties. Up until the French colonized that area as well. So what they did, they kidnapped his family. His family were prisoners of war, possibly through tribal wars or community wars in Western Africa, which is called Benin today, but the homie's original name. His family were kidnapped, his parents at least. It was brought to the island of Ayiti, and Toussaint's father was actually a king. His grandfather was actually a king in the homie. He was a leader of a warrior kingdom, which is, I'm going to get back to why that's important, why I keep stressing the warrior kingdom. And I did a big presentation on this when I was in college, African history course, which I'm not going to get too much into that. But once I did that presentation on the homie, the warrior kingdom, it infused in me my divinity. It's like a light was shining on me about my divinity and who my ancestors were. So now I became walking into my divinity, walking into my kingship. I wasn't going by the name King Kevin at the time. This is 2001, 2002. I graduated college 2005, Florida Atlantic University. But I began seeing myself differently. Ever since then, I refused to just do anything just because everybody else was doing it. I'm a king. I am a royalty. I'm not going to succumb to these petty activities. So big ups to the Dr. Becky Betts who made me do that presentation some time ago. I didn't want to get off, the floor when it was time when I get a presentation because I was so excited to know my real history. Now, Toussaint born May 20th, 1743, Cap Haitien, which is the northern part of Haiti, and he was born of royal bloodline of royalty. Napoleon was not. Napoleon was actually born in Corsica, a small island which was actually part of Italy. He was born actually during the war that the Corsicans were having against the French. So the Corsicans were having their own battle and war against the French, who he, over time, would become a Frenchman himself and become to love and turn his back on his own people. So that's something that you will also learn as well. Toussaint L'ouverture, wife of Simone Baptiste. Suzanne Simone Baptiste L'ouverture. He had two kids named Isaac and Placid. And he also adopted a few kids, a few children. And I'm going to get into that a little later because one of the girls he adopted is such a sweet story. Her name is Rose. You guys stay tuned for that. Now, Toussaint, as I mentioned, his family was from the Alada Kingdom of West Africa. Daddy's name was, his father's name, some people call it Hippolyte or Gao Gino, was an aristocrat around 1740 in the homie empires I mentioned. This empire actually controlled most of West Africa. Small as it was, they were known for two things: the Amazon queens, the Amazon warriors. I mean, you guys heard of the Amazon warriors, which were women who were tall and very brave and known to chop heads off. They also were, that country was also known for their heavy practice in voodoo, which we know as voodoo today, which is nothing more than a spiritual ceremonies that they do to acknowledge their ancestors and to, inculcate the powers of the ancestors, so they can do great feats, do great things, defeat their enemies, and come up with creative ideas, or even speak to their ancestors for wisdom. Something that a lot of us don't do today. Don't even go call grandma or grandpa for advice because we think we know everything with these smartphones. But really, our ancestors really focus more on spirituality, not so much materialistic things. We'll get into that. Now, General Toussaint, he has many different faces. This is a printing that I bought. I really could have went to Office Depot and had one of the people, the staff there, just pretty much, I could grab this off Google, and have them blow it up and print it from. I could have had one as big as this. This painting here is 72 by 48. It'll cover your whole wall. Now this one I ordered on Amazon because I needed to have a painting of Toussaint. One of the things that bothers me is the fact that I can't find an actual painting of Toussaint. I can't find nowhere an actual painting of what he looked like. You have dozens of variations of his image, and I will give you my theory on why that is. Now, Toussaint was worshipped as a god. You know, he literally saved thousands of lives, possibly millions of lives around the world through his inspiration. People who have never met him but heard the legends, heard the stories of him. You know, you have the people of Tortuga, which was, they had a slave revolution with a brother named Tuluá, who actually helped free his people. You know, that little island that was run by the Dutch, right? That was in the Caribbean as well. They heard about Toussaint. You know, the enslaved Africans. I'll never call our people slaves. I always refer to them as enslaved. Now, Tuluá, he heard about Toussaint, the revolution, inspired him, and eventually he became the leader of that revolution. You had revolutions in Jamaica, Bahamas. You had them in the 13 colonies in the United States, well, now it's known as the United States of America. Nat Turner heard about the General Toussaint. You know, years later started his rebellion. You have Denmark Vesey, Harriet Tubman. They all knew about General Toussaint L'ouverture in the Haitian Revolution, who actually became attorney governor, you can say governor, chief governor of the island, where he completely ruled the island of Haiti. As a matter of fact, let y'all know the secret. By like 1794, 95, he actually became the ruler of the whole island. Now, many people ask me, why is Haiti divided? You have Haiti here and DR on the western side, the eastern side, Haiti on the west side. Do you know why? Haiti actually used to be the whole island at one point. Of course, it was always divided. Toussaint took over, annexed the island, took over the whole island. So Haiti was one big island. You know, it combined Haiti and the Dominican Republic. But of course, when France came and they emancipated that and completely annihilated that idea. But Toussaint run the whole thing because he did not want his enemies to sneak up through the DR to attack Haiti. So he had to take over the whole thing. This is the type of mindset he had. Let's carry on here. He escaped 17 threats to his life. He escaped death 17 times. At least that we know of. You know what I mean? He operated like he had superpowers. As a matter of fact, in 1791, that's where the war started. Some people say 1790, like I said earlier. But by 1793, Francis Dominique Toussaint changed his name to Francis Dominique L'ouverture because he wanted to invoke the powers of the ancestors. L'ouverture, L, starts with the L, you know, you have apostrophe, Ouverture. What that means is the opening, the opener, one who finds the way. So by him calling himself that, he invoked the powers of that. That's why the naming of your children, the names you call yourselves, you see yourself as, is powerful. You are evoking powers, spiritual powers you don't know. A lot of us are calling ourselves negative things, not knowing that you're actually invoking negative karma, negative energy towards you, and you don't want that. Dr. John Bracey once said in his lecture, he's a professor at University of Massachusetts, right? Dr. John Bracey said a powerful thing. He said the reason why we don't know anything about the Haitian Revolution or General Toussaint L'ouverture is because when he was in elementary school, when he was in the Jim Crow era, when schools were segregated, this is, you know, Plessy versus Ferguson makes, you know, schools equal, but Brown versus Board of Education mentioned that segregated schools were illegal. So they desegregated schools. So before that happened, when schools were all black, they learned all about General Toussaint L'ouverture. As a matter of fact, in 1793, I want to say, couldn't be 1793, in 1893, there was a young man named Frederick Douglass. He gave a humongous speech at the World Fair in Chicago in 1893. Big speech. A 4-hour speech talking about his greatness and how black people need to support, need to honor, and also move to Haiti, the land of the free. They called Haiti Freedom Land, not America, who speaks about land of the free, free justice for all, and all the good rhetoric, right? But he praised Frederick Douglass, the world's greatest orator, one of the world's greatest writers and authors of the world, definitely the most famous abolitionist. This should be the world's most popular abolitionist. He freed the people, not by talking and waiting on massa to give us our paperwork, but they took it by sword. They took it mano a mano, hand-to-hand combat. Not none of this drones flying in the air, not none of this, bombs and, chemical warfare. Actually, it was the chemical warfare with the poisoning of the slave owners, the French slave owners. They did it by combat. They fought to the last man. And Toussaint won every single time. As a matter of fact, there's a legend about him that he won 7 battles in 7 days. 7 battles, 7 days. He rode a horse 150 miles per day. Horses. He had stables planted all over Haiti. Horses, well fed. Matter of fact, they said that he was half horse. He rode horses so well, and he could fight on the horse like nobody's business. Well, let me leave that alone. All right, now let's get into Napoleon Bonaparte, who was born August 15, 1769. He died, in exile. However, I'm going to get to a little more about Mr. Napoleon himself and why he's so celebrated. Now, for those who don't know, Napoleon Bonaparte, he ruled majority of Europe. As a matter of fact, every country that he ruled over, he put some family or one of his marshals from his army to be the king. As a matter of fact, some of the countries, to this day, that Napoleon's rules and policies and people put in power, their families are still ruling today. Sweden, Austria, was a couple of the countries. But he did his thing. He did his thing. Now, how did France get so powerful and so rich and so have this aura of excellence? I'm going to tell you why. And they got it just like most European countries got it. Like London, throughout the UK, how Germany, who else am I forgetting? Belgium. They got it off the backs of our ancestors. They literally stole and robbed everything they had. They got it from our ancestors, even here in America. This country was built on the backs of enslaved Africans, and now they're trying to fight to even remove that stuff from the history books. And now what are we going to do about it? Are we going to just stand and complain, or are we going to fight and make sure that the story of our ancestors are in there? Now, I don't want to just have slave history in the books when it comes to our people. Talk about when they were kings and queens. Talk about when they were rulers of the world. Talk about when they governed themselves with sovereignty and respect and honor and dignity. Teach them that, right? Now, Mr. Napoleon, even though he didn't initiate slavery in Haiti, but I'm going to tell you how Haiti became so rich. It was actually one of the richest countries, definitely the richest by far colony in the world. They produced 60% of the world's sugar, 50% of the world's coffee. As a matter of fact, 1 million out of the 25 million people living in France around the, I want to say, late 18th century, early 19th century, 1 million out of 25 million directly benefited from slavery in Saint Domingue. Now, I'm not talking about other islands that they ruled, they colonized. Martinique was one of them. They completely were benefiting, and just like the Union soldiers and Confederate soldiers fighting against or for slavery in the United States, the same thing happened in France. And then you have the French Revolution, because they was going broke. As a matter of fact, a lot of people don't know that King Louis XIV, with the 14th to the 15th, King Louis XVI, the one that got his head chopped off by the French people. So that was during the French Revolution. King Louis XV, the one before him, sent tons of money to America to help the, the Americans at the time who escaped, Britain to fight for the American independence against Britain. You know what I'm saying? So France was trying to align themselves with America because Britain has always been the enemy of France. Always. They've been arch enemy. They're like hyenas and lions. So in 1779, about 800 African-Haitian soldiers, freely, chasseurs volontaires, what they call them. Chasseurs volontaires Saint Dominique, the volunteer soldiers of Saint Dominique, which is today Haiti, fought in American independence. They literally fought here in Savannah, Georgia. Right? So Savannah, Georgia is the oldest city in Georgia, one of the oldest cities in this country, but definitely by far the oldest one in Georgia. This is where a lot of the enslaved Africans came to the ports of Savannah. Now, when the king helped support America against the Britain, that was one incident. And then you also have another way that the Haitian, the country of Haiti, helped America is because of the purchase Louisiana purchased by the U.S. with the France. France had to sell Louisiana territory, which is greatly increased the expansion of the United States of America westward, doing the westward expansion. That's why you got, other states like Kansas City, Idaho, North Dakota, South Dakota, Wyoming, Colorado, Arkansas. You know what I mean? Like, that made it possible. And then it made it possible for California to happen. You had the gold rush. That's why you get named the football team 49ers. 49ers mean gold diggers, miners. They were, looking for gold up in California. So the Haitian Revolution directly impacted the success and the sustainability of America, and also the wealth and resources of America. America owes Haiti big time. Big for that alone. Not to mention what I just said in 1779 when the Haitian soldiers came to help fight against Britain so that America could get their independence. That's something you guys might not have known. Also, in Haiti, on the plantations, they will work 16 to 23 hour shifts. 16 to 23 hour shifts working sugar fields, working against, the sun and the insects, the ants, and some of the tortures that they were going through. Just to let you know, in Haiti, there were no rules. There were no policies against, beating your property. That's what we were. Beating your property, killing your property, mutilating your property, starving them to death. Matter of fact, most of them had no clothes. At any given time, there were 500,000 enslaved Africans. 500,000. Compare that to 10, 20,000 in the U.S. enslaved Africans in the U.S. and plantations at the time. 500,000 doing the slave trade. And most of them were African born. From where? Warrior Kingdom of Dahomey, which I'm going to get into, and you're going to understand why that's so significant in the change of history. Certain events happened, and it led to the Haitian Revolution. Now, the Haitian Revolution directly was impacted by, or started by the French Revolution. The French Revolution was from I want to say from 1789 to 1793. 1787 to 1793, but actually started before those dates. Started before those dates because there were little things going on in France, like, people starving for a while, right? People starving, can't make any money. The French king and queen, Marie Antoinette, spending all kinds of money, on crazy hats and hairdos. You know how to weave. Our black women wearing a lot of, hairstyles or weaves. She was doing that back then. You know what I'm saying? Spending all kinds of money while the country's starving. And the husband spending money, millions of dollars, on billions of dollars on the Palace of Versailles. So that even made the country go even more bankrupt. That alone was built $200 to $300 billion back then. $200 to $300 billion to build a palace. I mean, it's one of the most luxurious palaces you've ever seen in the world. And one of the only palaces in the world I would love to see. I've seen many palaces around the world, from London. I've been to London 3 times. Seen the Palace Saint-Souci in Haiti, which is barely standing. It's right next to the City d'Or, which I'll get into. And both were built by King Henry Christophe, first and only king of Haiti. which we get into. Now, in Haiti, there will be 40,000 imported Africans a year. 40,000 a year. And they only expected them to live 2 to 3 years. So it was cheaper for them, instead of feeding you decent food, at least some clothes on, because most of the enslaved Africans were literally working on plantations, butt naked, no drawers, breasts and balls just hanging and swinging. No clothes. Maybe a piece of rag or two. You know what I'm saying? If someone felt sorry for you, to give you a piece of rag that they got. I mean, he treated our people like nothing. Absolutely nothing. There were sex toys. They were completely used for sex and for labor. Nothing more, nothing less. And if you died, you died. That's how they seen it. That's how they viewed it. That's how they treated our people. And it's funny that the Haitian Revolution, which lasted from 1791 to about 1803, General Jean-Jacques Dessalines, claimed independence on January 1st, 1804, from the French. It is amazing that America did not recognize Haiti's independence. America did not recognize Haiti's independence until, which is crazy, until 1862. Why didn't Abraham Lincoln, why didn't Thomas Jefferson, or John Adams, or even George Washington acknowledge the freedom of a whole country that broke themselves from slavery? Why not? I'm going to tell you why. Because it challenges the lustrous image, the prosperous image of America. Because it showed that America was a land of hypocrisy, and Haiti was a true land of democracy, where everybody was born free. As a matter of fact, 1801, while Toussaint was still in power, he put in the Constitution of 1801. As a matter of fact, there's a young lady who found the original Constitution in an old British book. She was doing some research. I want to say her name is Dr. Merlane. This white lady goes to Britain, does this research, and finds the original Constitution of 1801. You know how much money that thing is worth? She turned it into a museum, and now she's a professor here in Georgia. I want to say at the university, not Emory, not Georgia State, possibly Georgia State. There's another university here in Georgia. I can't think of the name right now. But I just can't believe that she found this. She found this maybe 10 years ago. But see, how can a constitution as important as that one be slipped and put away into a book to obscurity and nobody knows? Do you know why? Because they never respected us. They never respected us, and they made us not respect us. It made you not respect us. Because the greatness of a black nation can never be taught. Napoleon Bonaparte said, "I must stop the march of the blacks." Napoleon was not only a racist, but he was a tyrant. And I'm going to go into that. All right?